Every single year, Fort Moore's legendary infantry OSUT pushes over 19,000 eager civilian volunteers through a magnificent but grueling $3.5 billion tactical gauntlet. To forge just one elite American warrior, the military aggressively invests over $80,000 to completely overwrite their natural survival instincts. How exactly do they brilliantly transform a fragile civilian mind into an unbreakable, combat-ready apex predator? Let's breach the gates of this extraordinary military forge and uncover the spectacular evolution of the U.S. infantryman. 22 weeks of manufactured hell. Welcome to One Station Unit Training, or OSUT. It takes place across 182,000 unforgiving acres at Fort Moore, formerly known as Fort Benning. Here, human physiology is pushed to the absolute brink of systemic failure. Core body temperatures skyrocket. Heart rates sustain a punishing 180 beats per minute under load. Sleep is forcefully restricted to just 4 hours a night. Your mind operates in a constant, agonizing state of severe deprivation. Within the critical first 72 hours, the civilian ceases to exist. Trainees are entirely stripped of their former identities, issued standard combat uniforms, and violently thrust into the Thunder Run. This is a brutal, high-intensity introduction to the extreme physical and emotional demands of the United States Army. It culminates in the first 100 yards, a meticulously engineered crucible designed to forge instant, unbreakable unit cohesion. Personal ego is systematically dismantled, piece by piece. Individual survival is no longer the primary objective. In this environment, the squad is absolutely everything. To truly understand this aggressive transformation, we must analyze the sympathetic nervous system. When the sudden yelling starts, the brain triggers a massive, uncontrollable cortisol and adrenaline dump. This chemical flood induces the psychological fog of war. Peripheral vision narrows drastically. Auditory processing fragments into chaotic echoes. The Army specifically leverages this biological chaos using a psychological weapon called cognitive load. Drill sergeants deliberately overload a recruit's working memory with complex, contradictory commands, physical pain, and severe sleep deprivation. You physically cannot process this level of trauma as an isolated individual. You must subconsciously rely on the collective neural network of your team. This exact neurological phenomenon explains why the military officially retired the infamous shark attack tradition in 2020. That outdated method relied purely on fear and chaotic intimidation, which unfortunately triggered an unproductive fight-or-flight freeze response. The modern first 100 yards doctrine replaces blind terror with insurmountable synchronized group pressure. It forces a calculated, tactical response to extreme stress. You do not ever fail alone. Your entire platoon physically bleeds for your individual mistakes. This rapid neurological rewiring guarantees that when real ballistic threats appear, soldiers will instinctively react with coordinated, lethal aggression instead of falling into isolated, paralyzed panic. The ultimate breaking point always arrives at the fallen hero stations. Exhausted trainees execute the punishing Y-squat maneuver under the blazing Georgia sun. Shoulder joints scream. Quadriceps rapidly flood with toxic lactic acid until the muscle fibers physically spasm and lock up. Suddenly, a towering drill sergeant closes the tactical distance, screaming verbal fire just 2 inches from your sweaty face. The aggressive noise is deafening, vibrating violently straight through your eardrums. You cannot breathe properly. You cannot think clearly. In that exact fraction of a terrifying second, the civilian ego violently shatters, leaving behind only a hollow, disciplined vessel, perfectly ready to be reprogrammed. Faced with this calculated, overwhelming psychological pressure, designed specifically to crush your baseline survival instincts. How many agonizing minutes do you truly think you would last before screaming to quit? Drop your honest, unfiltered time down in the comment section below. Building an elite, highly lethal infantry squad requires relentless time, extreme dedication, and an uncompromising standard of excellence. Building a sharp, highly informed digital community right here requires the exact same dedication. If you want to completely master the hidden mechanics of modern warfare, hit that like button and subscribe today. Unbreakable steel discipline has officially taken shape, but when muscles are completely drained to the very last burning drop of lactic acid, what will they use to fight off a lethal chokehold step into phase 2? Welcome to Sand Hill, the physical geography of pure exhaustion. Recruits burn upwards of 6,000 calories daily. The metabolic math is absolutely ruthless. Despite forced hydration and strictly regulated chow hall diets, the average infantry trainee drastically sheds 15 to 25 pounds of total body mass. Their starving bodies literally consume their own stored fat and skeletal muscle tissues to fuel the relentless kinetic output. This extreme caloric deficit rapidly degrades overall muscle density and severely compromises the entire central immune system. To actively combat severe muscular inflammation and prevent microscopic stress fractures, instructors mandate immediate cold water immersion therapy. Exhausted recruits plunge their deeply battered hands into 38-degree Fahrenheit ice buckets for exactly 5 agonizing minutes. This rapid thermal shock instantly constricts dilated blood vessels. It violently flushes out toxic metabolic waste to rapidly accelerate microtissue recovery. But physiological recovery is brutally fleeting. The infamous confidence course awaits, dominated by a towering psychological nightmare known officially as the Tough One. This massive timber structure demands recruits physically scale a vertical 40-foot rope ascent. Here, brutal biomechanics dictate immediate survival. Gravity relentlessly pulls a standard 180-pound combat soldier downward with approximately 800 newtons of continuous downward force. To successfully counter this immense pull, recruits must actively maximize kinetic friction using the highly technical J-hook foot locking technique. Sweaty bare hands desperately grip the extremely coarse manila rope. They rely heavily on the microscopic friction coefficient, actively generated between fragile human skin and abrasive hemp fibers. A single momentary slip rapidly generates severe thermal friction. This instantly burns right through the outer epidermis layer. Furthermore, ascending vertically completely exhausts the latissimus dorsi and bicep brachii muscle groups. Cellular lactic acid pools exponentially. If an exhausted recruit physically stalls midair, the sustained isometric contraction causes dangerous microscopic tears deep inside the fast-twitch muscle fibers. Total grip failure at an unforgiving elevation of 30 feet guarantees a catastrophic, bone-shattering kinetic impact with the hard earth below. Scaling a 40-foot timber wall builds raw vertical dominance. However, modern infantry combat inevitably devolves into the bloody, intimate chaos of close-quarters battle deep inside urban environments. This is exactly why all infantry trainees must survive 40 grueling hours of the Modern Army Combatives Program, or MAC, P Level 1. Originally developed by the elite 75th Ranger Regiment, this highly brutal training system violently deconstructs flashy Hollywood martial arts. MACP is not about reckless kinetic striking or wild punching. Brute force rapidly depletes your limited cardiovascular reserves. Instead, MACP is the lethal, highly calculated application of advanced physics. It is the precise surgical manipulation of mechanical leverage and center of gravity control. Expert instructors teach desperate recruits to systematically isolate an enemy's limbs during intense ground combat. They learn to utilize skeletal bone structure as rigid physical fulcrums. They apply extreme rotational torque that human joints were simply never biologically designed to withstand. This is absolute scientific violence. The absolute apex of this intense biomechanical warfare occurs directly on the sweaty grappling mats. A dominant recruit forcefully secures rear back control. They rapidly slip a heavily muscled forearm tightly beneath their opponent's chin to violently execute the devastating rear naked choke. This specific maneuver is not a simple airway restriction. It is a highly calculated, aggressive cardiovascular strangulation. The attacker's flexing bicep and forearm simultaneously compress the bilateral carotid arteries with over 50 pounds of targeted physical pressure per square inch. This action mechanically severs the vital, rapid delivery of oxygenated blood traveling straight to the victim's cerebral cortex. Internally, the trapped victim's systolic blood pressure plummets drastically. Pure, unadulterated panic detonates deep inside the brain's amygdala. Within exactly 3.5 seconds, severe cerebral hypoxia aggressively sets in. The victim's peripheral vision violently collapses into a terrifying, dark, suffocating tunnel. Voluntary motor control evaporates completely. The dying brain urgently signals impending catastrophic unconsciousness. The trapped recruit has exactly 3 agonizing seconds to tap out. They must violently slap the synthetic mat to physically surrender before falling into a potentially lethal, unrecoverable clinical syncope. The visceral lesson is terrifyingly clear. You must respect the undeniable cold physics of the fragile human anatomy. Surrounded by hostile enemies in a highly confined space, do you choose to grapple and mechanically control the target, or draw your secondary weapon and fire immediately? Let us know your exact tactical strategy down in the comments. The body has been successfully forged into a lethal weapon, but when the surrounding air becomes a lung-scorching poison, will their brains remain lucid enough to command survival? Welcome directly to the Leadership Reaction course, commonly referred to as the LRC. Here the Army systematically tests cognitive processing under severe physical distress. Exhausted trainees face 20 completely isolated lanes, 10 of which are dry and 10 of which are completely submerged. They are given exactly 2 minutes for leader reconnaissance and a punishing 12 minutes to successfully execute complex logistical extractions. Ammunition crates weighing exactly 45 pounds must be transported across shattered, unstable bridges using only 3 wooden planks and a length of raw rope. This is not merely a physical puzzle, it is a high-stakes psychological pressure cooker. Instructors deliberately induce artificial chaos, screaming conflicting data to intentionally overload the squad leader's working memory. If a stressed leader hesitates for a single critical second, the entire simulated mission fails. But intellectual pressure is nothing compared to visceral primal terror. The true test of biological fear occurs at the 60-foot rappel tower. Standing at the precarious edge, trainees stare down a sheer, vertical drop. Here survival completely depends on mastering applied physical dynamics. A descending soldier naturally generates significant kinetic energy. To arrest this dangerous downward acceleration, the Army strictly utilizes the heavy-duty locking D-ring carabiner and the critical brake hand technique. By violently snapping the heavy static rope tightly against the small of their back, the trainee aggressively maximizes mechanical friction inside the solid metal D-ring. This specific angular shift generates an instant braking force capable of stopping a fully loaded 250-pound falling object dead in its tracks. However, if the brain panics and the trainee instinctively lets go of the thick brake rope with their dominant hand, they immediately enter a catastrophic, unrecoverable freefall. Earth's gravity instantly accelerates their total body mass downward at exactly 9.8 meters per second squared. Hitting the hard ground from 60 feet takes roughly 1.9 seconds, resulting in a devastating terminal kinetic impact that easily shatters a human pelvis into jagged fragments. You must absolutely trust the cold, unforgiving mathematics of friction, yet a lethal kinetic fall is relatively quick. Chemical warfare is agonizingly slow. The most dreaded milestone of basic infantry training is the NBC chamber, a fully sealed concrete bunker heavily saturated with military-grade tear gas. Before entering, trainees equip the standard issue M50 Joint Service General Purpose Mask. This remarkable piece of modern engineering utilizes twin conformal M61 advanced polyurethane filters, guaranteeing exactly 99.97% absolute protection against highly lethal airborne biological and chemical particulates. Breathing through it constantly feels heavily restricted, but it strictly keeps the surrounding poison out. The specific chemical agent used inside the chamber is 2-chlorobenzyl malonitrile, scientifically known worldwide as CS gas. This is not a standard vapor, it is a heavily weaponized crystalline microparticulate aerosol. When a microscopic CS crystal makes direct physical contact with the natural moisture constantly present in the human cornea or the sensitive mucosal lining of the upper respiratory tract, an immediate, extremely violent chemical reaction occurs. It aggressively strips away natural protective fluids, maliciously tricking the central brain's delicate pain receptors into falsely registering a severe third-degree thermal burn. Inside the dark, extremely hazy chamber, the drill sergeant finally commands the ultimate sacrifice. Masks off. The airtight silicone seal is abruptly broken. Toxic CS vapor instantly floods the unprotected respiratory system. The biological reaction is terrifyingly immediate. Eyes forcefully slam shut, burning violently as if aggressively splashed with concentrated battery acid. The sensitive esophagus aggressively constricts, desperately attempting to mechanically block the toxic particulate invasion. Extreme mucosal discharge instantly clogs the narrow airways. Every single primal survival instinct deeply buried within the primitive brainstem violently screams to immediately shatter the locked concrete door and frantically sprint outside for fresh oxygen. But conditioned military discipline must completely override ancient human DNA. In the absolute midst of this pure, suffocating panic, with eyes streaming tears and lungs frantically gasping for microscopic pockets of clean air, the trapped trainees must stand perfectly at attention. Through uncontrollable coughing and violent choking, they must aggressively project their raspy voices and proudly scream the entire soldier's creed in perfect, unwavering unison. Between a terrifying 60-foot vertical drop or actively suffocating inside a highly toxic gas chamber, which absolute fear would physically break your psyche first? Drop your honest answer down in the comments below. Mastering pure biological fear is merely a mandatory, foundational stepping stone, Do these exhausted, battered trainees truly possess the cold blood required to confidently squeeze the trigger and permanently terminate a living target when finally handed high-velocity machines of destruction? Mastering pure biological fear transitions directly into the cold, calculated arithmetic of lethal force. The foundational tool of this violent trade is the M3 carbine, a gas-operated magazine-fed weapon system that serves as an extension of the soldier's own central nervous system. Firing the standard 5.56 by 45mm NATO cartridge, this rifle launches a 62-grain copper-jacketed projectile at a staggering muzzle velocity of exactly 2,970 feet per second. Trainees do not merely learn to shoot, they must completely master the complex, unforgiving physics of terminal ballistics. When that high-velocity projectile violently strikes soft human tissue, it does not simply puncture a neat hole. It instantly generates a massive temporary cavitation bubble. This extreme hydrostatic shockwave violently displaces internal organs, tearing through vascular networks and causing catastrophic systemic biological failure in fractions of a millisecond. However, a single rifleman is fundamentally vulnerable. To truly dominate the chaotic geometry of a modern battlefield, the squad must orchestrate a devastating symphony of suppressive fire. Trainees are heavily drilled on the M249 squad automatic weapon and the formidable M24 OB medium machine gun. Firing the heavier 7.62 by 51mm round, the M24 OB can actively sustain a punishing cyclic rate of 750 rounds per minute. Instructors teach the lethal mathematics of interlocking fields of fire and the beaten zone, an elliptical pattern of falling lead designed to completely pin down enemy combatants, denying them the vital physical space required to maneuver or breathe. Yet small arms fire is utterly useless against heavy mechanized armor. When facing fortified bunkers or multi-million-dollar infantry fighting vehicles, the squad relies on the M3 Carl Gustaf 84mm recoilless rifle. Firing this devastating shoulder-launched anti-tank weapon is an incredibly violent, traumatic physical event for the operator. The weapon functions by directing explosive gases rearward to neutralize recoil, generating a massive, lethal backblast cone. But the true danger is completely invisible. Pulling the heavy trigger creates an intense, localized acoustic overpressure wave that consistently registers at a bone-rattling 180 decibels. This invisible kinetic shock wave instantly compresses the dense air immediately surrounding the operator's skull. It violently rattles the human brain inside the cranium. Repeated firings of the M3 actively cause microscopic traumatic brain injuries, MTBI. These exhausted soldiers are literally sacrificing a permanent, irreplaceable piece of their own long-term neurological health every single time they pull the trigger to obliterate an enemy threat. With massive, unyielding firepower comes the absolute certainty of catastrophic physical trauma. Modern infantrymen are not just conditioned killers. They must simultaneously function as frontline trauma surgeons operating under extreme ballistic duress. Tactical Combat Casualty Care, or TCCC, strictly dictates survival through the rigorous application of the March protocol, massive hemorrhage, airway respiration, circulation, and hypothermia. Massive hemorrhage is always the immediate life-threatening priority. A fully severed femoral artery in the human leg will completely drain the adult body of its entire 5-liter blood volume in under 3 agonizing minutes. Soldiers are given a terrifying, unforgiving 30-second golden window to actively intervene. They drill relentlessly night and day with the combat application tourniquet, CAT. They learn the desperate, brutal mechanics of twisting the rigid windlass rod until the intense mechanical pressure intentionally crushes the underlying muscle against the femur, completely cutting off arterial flow. For junctional wounds where a tourniquet physically cannot be applied like the groin or armpit, they utilize highly advanced hemostatic combat gauze, primarily QuikClot. This specialized medical gauze is heavily impregnated with kaolin, an inorganic aluminosilicate mineral that aggressively activates the body's natural factor 12 coagulation cascade. Soldiers must aggressively shove their fingers deep inside the open, bleeding wound cavity, brutally packing the gauze directly against the severed artery. They must maintain immense physical pressure, while the active kaolin chemically forces a massive life-saving blood clot in under 60 seconds. Doing this while your hands are slick with blood and enemy rounds are aggressively snapping just inches above your head requires a level of psychological compartmentalization that borders on the superhuman, but no simulation. No matter how intense, fully prepares the human mind for the reality of high explosives. The live-fire M67 fragmentation grenade qualification is the absolute apex of psychological tension at Fort Moore. Trainees step into the heavily reinforced concrete bunker, their breathing shallow and rapid. The heavy olive drab steel casing feels ice cold in their sweating palms. They aggressively grip the safety lever, known as the spoon. The steel pin is violently pulled. Click. The spoon violently flies off. Inside the grenade, the chemical striker ignites the delay fuse, initiating a terrifying, irreversible 4 to 5 second countdown. They hurl the heavy explosive over the thick concrete barrier and drop violently to the dirt, pressing their helmets hard against the ground. 0. The kinetic shockwave physically hits your chest a microsecond before the deafening sound actually registers in your ears. Exactly 6.5 ounces of composition B explosive, a lethal mixture of RD, X, and T, NT, violently detonate. It instantly expands hot toxic gases at an astonishing 25,000 feet per second. The blast generates a lethal 15-meter overpressure radius, violently tearing the earth apart and sending thousands of jagged, microscopic steel fragments aggressively slicing through the surrounding air at supersonic speeds. Then an eerie, ringing silence follows the chaos. In that exact fraction of a second, staring deeply into the smoking, shattered crater, the young recruit experiences a cold, sharp, undeniable realization of their absolute, terrifying power to take human life. This is the undeniable, brilliant twist of modern warfare strategy. The Pentagon spends trillions of dollars meticulously developing invisible stealth bombers, autonomous drones, and hypersonic missile arrays. Yet all of that cutting-edge billion-dollar technology is fundamentally useless without the ultimate tactical hardware, unbroken human willpower. OSUT does not manufacture mindless robotic drones. It forcibly and systematically evolves ordinary fragile civilians into highly adaptable, calculating apex predators. The final graduation ceremony at the National Infantry Museum is deeply solemn. As they formally pin the coveted infantry blue cord onto their sharp, pressed dress uniforms, the atmosphere is heavy. This beautiful blue rope is not a glorious finish line. It is a binding, irreversible blood contract. They are officially signing away their comfortable civilian lives to willingly step into the world's most violent, unforgiving meat grinders. The blue cord has been proudly placed on their shoulders today, but when they are finally deployed onto a chaotic live-fire battlefield, exactly how many will actually carry that cord back home? Leave your honest thoughts and predictions down in the comments below. If you want to keep dissecting the brutal, unfiltered reality of global military strategy and the dark psychology of combat, hit that like button and subscribe right now. I will see you in the next Tactical Dossier.